The scream cut through the blizzard like a knife. I froze mid-step, one hand on the cabin door, the other gripping my rifle. Wind howled through the pines, snow thick as wool in the air. Temperature had to be 15 below, maybe worse. Nothing human could survive out there. Nothing should be out there. The scream came again, raw, desperate, dying. A woman. My dog Flint growled low in his throat. Not the warning growl he gave for wolves or bears. This was different, uncertain. Like he knew something was wrong but couldn't name it. I had two choices. Bar the door, keep the fire burning, let whoever it was become another ghost in these mountains, or go. 6 years I'd lived alone on this mountain. 6 years since I buried my family. 6 years since I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to lose again. The scream came a third time, weaker now, fading. I grabbed my coat. Come on, Flint, we're going to regret this. The wind hit me like a fist the second I stepped outside. Snow so thick I couldn't see my own boots. Cold that bit through my coat, through my shirt, straight into my bones. This wasn't just a storm. This was the kind of blizzard that killed people. The kind that left bodies frozen in the snow until spring thaw. I pulled my scarf over my mouth and nose, squinted into the white chaos, and listened. Nothing but wind. I took 3 steps forward, then 5, then 10. Flint pressed close to my leg, his black and white fur already crusted with ice. The dog's ears swiveled, searching for the sound that had brought us out here. Come on, I muttered. Where are you? Then I heard it. Faint. So faint I almost missed it. Not a scream this time. A moan, low and broken. The sound of someone who'd given up hope but couldn't quite stop breathing. I turned left, pushing through drifts that came up to my thighs. Flint barked once, sharp and urgent, then bolted ahead. I followed the dog's dark shape through the white, stumbling over hidden roots and rocks, my lungs burning from the cold air. Flint stopped at a massive pine tree, its branches heavy with snow. The dog pawed at something on the ground, whining. I dropped to my knees, a body, half buried in snow, curled in on itself like a child trying to stay warm. My hands shook as I brushed snow away from the face. A woman, young, maybe mid-20s. Her skin was pale as the snow around her, lips blue, eyes closed. Ice clung to her eyelashes. Her hair, dark red-brown, was frozen solid. She wore a nightgown. Just a thin cotton nightgown. No coat, no shoes. Her bare feet were already turning black. And her belly. God in heaven, her belly. She was pregnant, very pregnant. The nightgown stretched tight over her stomach, and even through the fabric I could see the shape, 8 months, maybe 9. Who throws a pregnant woman into a blizzard? I didn't have time to think about it. I stripped off my coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. Her skin was ice, not cold, ice, like touching a frozen lake. Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me? Nothing. I slid my arms under her knees and back, lifted her in one motion. She was light, too light for someone this far along. Whoever had done this to her, they'd been starving her. Her head lolled against my chest. For a second, I thought she was already gone. Then her eyes fluttered open, just for a moment. Gray, blue eyes, wide with terror, her lips moved. I leaned closer, trying to hear over the wind. "My baby," she whispered. "They took my son. Please, you have to." Then she was gone again, unconscious, or worse. I looked at Flint. The dog stared back at me, snow thick on his muzzle, waiting for orders. "Home," I said. "Take us home, boy." The journey back was hell. I couldn't see landmarks, couldn't tell direction. The woman in my arms was dead weight, her body limp and freezing. Every few steps I stumbled. Once I fell, landing hard on my shoulder. The woman didn't wake, didn't make a sound. Flint stayed ahead, barking when I strayed too far off course. The dog had made this walk 1,000 times, in every kind of weather. I trusted him more than I trusted my own instincts right now. My arms burned, my legs burned, the cold sank deeper, making every breath painful. I started to wonder if we'd make it, if I'd freeze out here with a stranger in my arms, if they'd find us both in the spring, locked together in ice. Then Flint barked loud and sharp, and I looked up. The cabin. 20 feet ahead, barely visible through the snow. But there. I kicked the door open, stumbled inside, laid the woman on the floor near the fireplace. My hands were numb. It took 3 tries to get the door closed against the wind. Flint shook snow from his coat, then immediately went to the woman, sniffing her face, her hands. The dog whined, looking at me with eyes that said, "Fix this." I know, boy. I know. I built up the fire first, big and hot. Then I peeled the frozen nightgown off her body, had to cut it in places where the fabric had frozen to her skin. I wrapped her in every blanket I owned, tucked them tight around her. Her lips were still blue, her fingers were still ice. I boiled water, poured it into a flask, wrapped the flask in cloth, and pressed it against her belly. Then another against her chest, another against her feet. All the while I watched her face, watched for signs of life, for breath, for anything. Her chest rose, fell, rose again, shallow but steady. She was alive, for now. I sat back on my heels, breathing hard, staring at this woman I'd pulled from the snow, this stranger who'd almost died in my woods, who was pregnant. Who'd said someone took her son? What the hell had I walked into? Flint settled beside her, resting his head on his paws, keeping watch. The dog wouldn't leave her side now. That was just his way. Once he decided someone needed protecting, he didn't quit. I stood, my legs shaking. Exhaustion hit me all at once. I'd been out in that storm for an hour, maybe more. My coat was gone, left somewhere in the snow. My hands were raw and red. My beard was frozen solid, but the woman was inside. She was warm, she was breathing. I'd done all I could. I pulled a chair close to the fire and sat down, watching her, listening to the storm rage outside. The wind shrieked and clawed at the cabin walls. Snow piled against the windows. This blizzard would last days, maybe a week. We were trapped here together, me and this dying woman, and whatever secrets she carried. I thought about Ruth, my wife, the way she'd looked at me the day I left to go hunting. "I'll see you in 3 days," she'd said. "Be safe." But I hadn't seen her in 3 days. I'd seen her in a grave, her and Emma and Lily, all 3 of them cold and still when I came home. I'd been too late then. Maybe I wasn't too late now. The woman moaned, a soft sound barely audible over the fire. I leaned forward, watching her face. Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Then her whole body went rigid. Her back arched off the floor, her mouth opened in a silent scream. Her hands clutched at the blankets, knuckles white. I knew that look. I'd seen it twice before. She was in labor. No. Oh, no, no, no. I dropped to my knees beside her, put my hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am? Ma'am, can you hear me?" Her eyes flew open, wild, unfocused. She stared at me like she didn't know where she was, like she didn't know who I was. Then the contraction passed. Her body relaxed. She sucked in air, gasping. Who are you?" Her voice was barely a whisper, hoarse from screaming. "My name's Cormac Thorne. I found you in the storm, brought you here. Where is here?" "My cabin, about 15 miles north of Thornhill." She closed her eyes. A tear slid down her cheek. "They threw me out. I was in labor and they threw me out." "Who did?" "My husband's family. They took my son, they took Tobias, and they threw me out to die." Her face crumpled. She started to cry, deep wrenching sobs that shook her whole body. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say, so I just put my hand on her shoulder and waited. After a minute, she wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, looked at me again. This time her gaze was clearer, sharper. How long was I out there? I don't know, hours maybe, and the baby still alive, for now. Another contraction hit. I saw it coming this time, saw her face tighten, saw her hands grip the blankets. She screamed, a raw, primal sound that filled the cabin. Flint whined and backed away, ears flat. I grabbed her hand. She squeezed so hard I felt bones grind. The contraction lasted 30 seconds, maybe 40. When it passed, she was panting, her face slick with sweat despite the cold. "How far apart are the contractions?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe 10 minutes?" That wasn't good. 10 minutes meant the baby was coming soon, very soon. "I need to check something," I said. "Is that all right?" She nodded, too exhausted to argue. I pulled back the blankets, checked her belly. It was hard as stone. Tight. The baby was definitely coming. Tonight. Maybe within the hour. "Ma'am, I need you to listen to me. This baby is coming soon. Do you understand?" She nodded again. "I've delivered babies before. Twice." "My wife?" I stopped, cleared my throat. "I know what to do, but I need you to stay with me. Can you do that?" Her gray-blue eyes locked on mine. For a long moment she just stared. Then she said, "What's your name again?" "Cormac. Cormac." She repeated it slowly, like she was testing the sound. "All right, Cormac, I'll stay. But you have to promise me something." "What?" "If I don't make it, you have to find my son. His name is Tobias. He's 4 years old. The Brennan family has him. They live on a ranch 10 miles south of Thornhill. You have to get him away from them. Please, you're going to make it. Promise me." I hesitated. Making promises to dying people was dangerous. I'd learned that the hard way. But looking at her face, seeing the desperation there, I couldn't say no. "I promise." She nodded, satisfied. Then another contraction hit, and she was screaming again. The next 3 hours were the longest of my life. I'd delivered 2 babies before, Emma and Lily. I'd been there when Ruth gave birth, helped the midwife, done what I was told. But this was different. This was just me. No midwife, no doctor, no one who knew what they were doing. Just me and a woman I'd met an hour ago trying to bring a baby into the world in the middle of a blizzard. I boiled water. I found clean cloth. I washed my hands until they were raw. Then I knelt between her legs and tried to remember everything I'd learned 8 years ago. The contractions came faster, 5 minutes apart, then 3, then 1. She screamed herself hoarse, grabbed my arm so hard she left bruises, cursed me, cursed God, cursed the family that had thrown her out. But she didn't give up, even when I saw the exhaustion in her eyes, even when I knew she was at the end of her strength. She kept pushing. "I can see the head," I said. "You're almost there. One more push. I can't." "Yes, you can. I can't. I'm too tired." I grabbed her hand, looked her straight in the eye. "Yes, you can. Your son is waiting for you. This baby is waiting for you. Now push." She screamed one more time, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. I saw her whole body tense, saw every muscle strain. And then the baby was there, sliding into my hands, small and slick and perfect, a girl. For one horrible moment, the baby didn't move, didn't cry, just lay in my hands, silent and still, her eyes closed. No, not again, please, God, not again. I cleaned her mouth and nose with my finger, rubbed her chest. Nothing. Then I turned her over and patted her back. Once, twice, the baby gasped. Her tiny chest expanded, and she let out a thin, warbling cry that was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I laughed. Couldn't help it. A short, breathless sound that was half relief, half disbelief. "She's alive," I said. "You did it! She's alive!" The woman on the floor was crying, tears streaming down her face. "Let me see her. Please, let me see her." I wrapped the baby in the cleanest cloth I had, then placed her on her mother's chest. The woman's arms came up immediately, holding the baby close, her whole body shaking. "She's beautiful," she whispered. "She's so beautiful." I sat back on my heels, breathing hard. My hands were covered in blood. My shirt was soaked with sweat. But it was done. The baby was here. They were both alive. For now. I took care of the afterbirth, cleaned up as best I could. Then I made sure the woman was comfortable, propped up with blankets, the baby tucked against her chest. She looked at me with those gray-blue eyes, and I saw something there I hadn't seen before. Not fear, not desperation. Something else. Something like recognition. "Thank you," she said. I don't know your name. I don't know who you are. But thank you. You already know my name. Cormac. No, I mean, I don't know anything about you. Why you're here. Why you saved me. Why you'd risk your life for a stranger. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, 6 years ago, I lost my wife and daughters. Scarlet fever took them while I was away. I came home to 3 graves. I've lived alone ever since, up here, away from people, away from everything. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Tonight I heard you screaming, and I had a choice. I could stay inside, stay safe, or I could go. I went because 6 years ago, I wasn't there when my family needed me. I couldn't save them, but maybe I could save you. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, What's your wife's name? Ruth. And your daughters? Emma and Lily. She looked down at the baby in her arms, then back at me. I'm going to name her Grace, because she came into this world by grace, yours and God's. I nodded, my throat tight. My name is Eliza, she said. Eliza Brennan. The storm raged on outside. Wind shrieked. Snow piled higher against the walls, but inside the cabin, by the light of the fire, 3 people breathed together. A woman who'd been thrown out to die, a baby born in the coldest night of winter, and a man who'd spent 6 years believing he was already dead. Maybe we'd all survive this. Maybe we wouldn't. But for tonight, we were alive. And that was enough. I sat by the fire watching them. Eliza had fallen asleep, exhausted beyond measure. Grace slept too, her tiny fist curled against her mother's chest. Flint lay at their feet, keeping watch. I should have been exhausted too, should have collapsed into bed and slept for a week. But I couldn't. My mind was racing. Eliza had said they took her son, that the Brennan family had him, that they'd thrown her into a blizzard while she was in labor. What kind of people did that? I thought about Tobias, 4 years old, alone with people who'd tried to kill his mother. What were they doing to him right now? Was he scared? Was he crying for his mother? I looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully. She had no idea how close she'd come to dying tonight. No idea that her mother had been left in the snow to freeze. No idea that somewhere out there a little boy was waiting for a mother who might never come back. I'd made a promise. If I don't make it, you have to find my son. But Eliza had made it. She was alive. Weak, but alive. Still, that little boy was out there. And winter in Montana didn't forgive, didn't wait. I stood up, walked to the window. Snow had completely covered the glass. I couldn't see anything beyond it. The blizzard showed no signs of stopping. We were trapped here for days, maybe a week. And when the storm finally broke, I'd have to make a choice. Send Eliza on her way and go back to my solitary life. Or help her get her son back. The smart choice was obvious. I didn't know these people, didn't know their problems. Getting involved meant risking everything. My safety, my peace, my carefully constructed walls. But then I thought about that little boy again. Thought about Emma and Lily. Thought about how I'd failed them. Maybe I couldn't save my own daughters. But maybe, just maybe, I could save someone else's son. I returned to my chair and closed my eyes. Outside, the mountains screamed. Inside, the fire crackled and popped. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, I heard Ruth's voice, as clear as if she were standing beside me. Don't let them be alone. Those were the last words she'd said to me the morning I left to go hunting. Don't let them be alone, Cormac. Promise me. I'd promised. And then I'd broken that promise by not being there when they needed me most. I wasn't going to break it again. When Eliza woke, I'd tell her. I'd help her get Tobias back. I'd face the Brennan family, whoever they were. I'd do whatever it took, because 6 years ago, I'd failed to save my family. But I wasn't going to fail this time. The decision settled over me like a weight, heavy but right. I opened my eyes and looked at Eliza and Grace sleeping by the fire. 2 lives I'd save tonight. 2 lives I'd keep saving for as long as they needed me. The storm could rage all it wanted. The mountain could scream. The cold could bite. I'd survived worse, and I'd survived this too, because I wasn't dead anymore. For the first time in 6 years, I had a reason to fight, a reason to live, and I wasn't letting go. The first morning light came gray and cold through the cracks in the shutters. I hadn't slept. Just sat in my chair watching Eliza and Grace breathe, listening to the storm batter the cabin walls. Flint had moved closer to them sometime in the night, his body a warm barrier between them and the door. The blizzard hadn't stopped. If anything, it had gotten worse. I stood slowly, my joints stiff from sitting all night. The fire had burned down to coals. I added wood, coaxed flames, back to life. Then I checked on Eliza. Her forehead was hot, too hot. Fever. I'd been afraid of this. Childbirth in these conditions, the exposure to cold, the trauma. Infection was almost inevitable. I touched her shoulder gently. Eliza, wake up. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening when she saw me. For a second, fear crossed her face, then recognition, then something like relief. Cormac, how do you feel? She tried to sit up, winced. Like I've been trampled by horses. You have a fever. I need to make a tea, something to bring it down. She nodded weakly, then looked down at Grace sleeping against her chest. Is she all right? She's perfect, strong, healthy. You did good. A small smile touched her lips, then it faded. How long was I asleep? Most of the night. It's morning now, or what passes for morning in this storm. Eliza looked toward the window, though there was nothing to see but darkness. How bad is it? Bad. We're not going anywhere for a while. I saw the panic flash in her eyes. Tobias. I have to get to Tobias. Not today. Not in this. You'd die before you made it a mile, but he's alone with them. With her. Judith will... I knelt beside her. Who's Judith? Eliza's face hardened. My husband's mother. Marcus died 5 months ago. Horse threw him. Broke his neck. And from the moment he hit the ground, Judith made it clear I wasn't welcome anymore. She paused, her breathing shallow. She said I wasn't really Marcus's wife, that the marriage wasn't legitimate, that Tobias belonged to the Brennan family, not to me. I tried to leave, tried to take Tobias and run, but she had men watching, always watching. Eliza's hand clenched around the blanket. Then I realized I was pregnant again, and I knew Judith would never let me keep both children. So she waited until I went into labor. Then she had her foreman drag me outside and lock the door. What about Tobias? What did he do? Eliza's voice broke. He screamed for me, tried to run after me, but Judith held him back. The last thing I saw before the door closed was my son reaching for me, crying. Then nothing but snow. I was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then I said, this Judith, what kind of woman is she? The kind who sees people as property, who thinks money and land are all that matter. She's not cruel for cruelty's sake. She's cruel because she believes she's right, that she's protecting the family legacy. Eliza looked at me with those gray-blue eyes. That makes her more dangerous than someone who's just evil. You can reason with evil. You can't reason with righteousness. I stood up, walked to the small shelf where I kept my medicine supplies. Dried herbs, mostly. Things I'd learned to use over the years. Willow bark for pain and fever. Yarrow for infection. Elderberry for strength. I made a tea, strong and bitter. Brought it to Eliza. Drink this, all of it. She drank without complaint, though I saw her face twist at the taste. When she finished, she handed the cup back. Thank you. I need to check your stitches. Make sure everything's healing right. She nodded, and I examined her as clinically as I could. The bleeding had stopped. That was good. But the fever worried me. I'd seen women die from childbed fever, seen it take them fast and hard. I covered her back up. You need to rest. Let your body heal. We're not going anywhere until this storm breaks anyway. And when it breaks, then we figure out how to get your son back. Eliza studied my face. Why are you helping me? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. I sat back down in my chair. Maybe I don't. but I made you a promise last night, and I keep my promises, even to strangers, especially to strangers. The people I made promises to before, I failed them. I'm not failing you." The wind screamed outside. Snow rattled against the shutters. Grace stirred against Eliza's chest, making small sounds, and Eliza adjusted her hold, soothing the baby back to sleep. "Tell me about them," Eliza said quietly. "Your wife, your daughters." I didn't talk about Ruth and the girls, hadn't in 6 years. But something about sitting in this cabin with this woman I barely knew, with the storm raging outside and nowhere to go, made the words come easier. "Ruth was kind," I said. "Too kind for someone like me. I was rough around the edges, hard, the war did that. But she saw something in me worth saving." I stared into the fire. Emma looked just like her, same dark hair, same smile. She was 6 when she died, smart as a whip, always asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do birds fly south? Where does the sun go at night? I stopped, swallowed hard. Lily was quieter, more like me, I guess. She'd sit for hours, just watching things. Ants carrying crumbs, clouds moving across the sky. She didn't need words. She was happy just being. "What happened?" Eliza asked gently. "I went hunting. 3-day trip into the mountains. We needed meat for winter. When I left, they were fine, healthy, happy." My hands clenched. I came back to Graves. The fever had swept through fast. Ruth held on the longest, trying to take care of the girls. But there was no doctor, no medicine, nothing anyone could do. I looked at Eliza. The neighbor who buried them said Ruth called my name at the end, asked where I was, if I was coming home. "I'm sorry," Eliza whispered. "So am I." We sat in silence for a while. The fire crackled. Grace made soft sleeping sounds. Flint's tail thumped once against the floor. Then Eliza said, "You can't blame yourself for that, can't I? You were providing for your family, doing what you had to do. I should have been there. Would it have changed anything? Would you have been able to save them?" I didn't answer because I didn't know. Maybe not. Probably not. But at least they wouldn't have died alone. Eliza shifted, wincing at the pain. "Cormac, listen to me. You didn't fail them. You were a good husband, a good father. The fever took them. Not you. Doesn't feel that way. I know. But feelings aren't facts." She said it so simply, so matter-of-fact, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. And maybe it was. But I'd spent 6 years drowning in guilt, and simple truths were hard to hear through all that noise. The rest of that first day passed slowly. I made soup from dried venison and vegetables. Fed Eliza, made sure she drank water, checked her fever every few hours. It stayed high but didn't get worse. That was something. Grace woke twice to nurse, then fell back asleep. She was a quiet baby, didn't cry much, just watched everything with dark, serious eyes. Flint stayed close to them both, like he'd appointed himself their guardian. By nightfall, the storm still hadn't let up. If anything, the wind had gotten stronger. I could hear trees cracking outside under the weight of snow, could hear the cabin groaning and creaking. "We're safe here," I told Eliza when I saw the worry on her face. "This cabin survived worse." "How long have you lived here?" 6 years. Built it myself after everything." "All alone? Just me and Flint?" "That's a long time to be alone." I shrugged. "It's what I deserved." Eliza frowned. "No one deserves to be alone. Some people do." "Not you. You don't know that. You don't know me. I know you risked your life to save a stranger. I know you delivered my baby when you could have left me to die. I know you're sitting here taking care of me when you could have sent me on my way." She met my eyes. That tells me everything I need to know. I didn't have an answer for that, so I just nodded and went back to tending the fire. Day 2 started the same as day 1. Gray light, howling wind. Eliza's fever had broken sometime in the night. When I checked her forehead, it was cool, still warm, but not burning. "You're healing," I told her. She smiled weakly. "Thanks to you. Thank your body. It's doing the work. I made breakfast, oatmeal and dried berries. Not fancy, but filling." Eliza ate slowly, her strength clearly depleted. But she ate it all. After breakfast, she asked if she could try sitting up. I helped her, supporting her back with rolled blankets. Grace lay in her lap, awake now, staring at everything with those serious eyes. "She looks like you," I said. "You think so?" The eyes. And the expression, like she's trying to figure everything out. Eliza smiled. "Maybe she is." Flint came over and laid his head on Eliza's knee. She reached down, scratched behind his ears. "He likes you," I said. "I like him too." "What kind of dog is he?" "Border Collie. Best working dogs there are. Smart, loyal, stubborn as hell. Sounds like someone else I know." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" Eliza just smiled and kept petting Flint. That afternoon, while Eliza rested, I took inventory of our supplies. Food was good. I had plenty of dried meat, beans, flour, oats, enough to last a month or more. Water wasn't a problem either. I could melt snow. Firewood was stacked high outside, though getting to it in this storm was difficult. We could wait this out. However long it took, the question was what happened after. I sat by the window, looking out at the white wall of snow pressed against the glass. Somewhere out there 10 miles south, a little boy was waiting for his mother. A little boy who thought she'd abandoned him, who didn't know she'd fought to get back to him, who didn't know she'd nearly died trying. Judith Brennan. The name sat bitter in my mouth. The kind of woman who could throw a pregnant woman into a blizzard. Who could take a child from his mother and feel righteous about it. I'd known people like that. In the war, after the war, people who did terrible things and called it duty, called it necessary, called it God's will. They were the most dangerous kind. "You're thinking about Tobias," Eliza said. I turned. She was awake, watching me. "Yeah, me too. I haven't stopped thinking about him since they took me. What's he like?" Eliza's face softened. "Sweet, gentle. He cries when he sees hurt animals, brings me flowers he picks from the field. Tells me stories about dragons and knights." She paused. "He looks like his father, dark hair, brown eyes. But he has my temperament, quiet, thoughtful. Does he know about the baby?" "No, I didn't tell him. I was afraid Judith would, I don't know, use it against me somehow." "And Marcus? What was he like?" Eliza was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Distant. Not cruel. Just absent. He married me because his mother told him to, because she wanted an heir and I was suitable enough. Young, healthy, orphaned, so there was no family to complicate things." She looked down at Grace. "He did his duty, got me pregnant, then went back to his life, the ranch, the horses, his mother. I don't think he loved me. I'm not sure he even liked me, but he wasn't unkind. That's a lonely way to live. It was. But I had Tobias, and that made it bearable, and now you have Grace. Now I have Grace, and I need to get them both away from that place, away from Judith, away from everything. We will." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I won't let it happen any other way." Eliza studied me for a long moment. Then she said, "You're a good man, Cormac Thorne. I'm just a man." "No, you're more than that, and I think you know it." On the third day, Eliza was strong enough to stand. I helped her walk to the window, supported her weight as she looked out at the storm. "It's beautiful," she said, "in a terrible way. The mountains are like that, beautiful and brutal." "Have you always lived in Montana?" "Born here. Left for the war. Came back after. This is home. The only one I've ever known. Do you like it? Being alone up here? I thought I did. For a long time I thought isolation was what I needed, punishment for failing my family. And now I'm not so sure." We stood there together watching the snow fall. Grace slept against Eliza's chest, wrapped in blankets. Flint sat at our feet. It felt strange, standing here with another person, having conversation, having company. I'd gotten so used to silence that words felt foreign, but not unwelcome. "Tell me about the ranch," I said. "The Brennan place." Eliza's expression darkened. "It's big, 3,000 acres. Cattle, horses, some sheep. The house is 2 stories. White clapboard? Nice from the outside, but inside it's cold. Judith runs it like a general runs an army. everything precise, everything controlled. How many people work there? Maybe a dozen ranch hands. Plus the house staff, cook, housekeeper, stable boys, and Judith controls them all, with money and fear. She pays well, but she demands absolute loyalty. Anyone who crosses her gets blacklisted, can't find work anywhere in the territory. What about the law? The sheriff? Eliza laughed bitterly. The sheriff is a man named Whitlock, Thomas Whitlock. He's been in Judith's pocket for years. She pays him to look the other way, so we can't count on help from him. No. If we go to Whitlock, he'll side with Judith. Then we'll have to be smart about this. Eliza turned to look at me. You keep saying we, like you're really going to help. I told you I would. But why? What's in this for you? Nothing. Maybe that's the point. She frowned. I don't understand. I spent 6 years hiding up here, 6 years punishing myself, 6 years doing nothing that mattered. Maybe this is my chance to matter again. Eliza reached out, put her hand on my arm. You already matter. I covered her hand with mine. Then we'll matter together. On the 4th day, the storm finally began to ease. The wind died down. The snow stopped falling. By afternoon, I could see patches of sky through the clouds. We'll be able to leave soon, I told Eliza. Maybe tomorrow, day after at the latest. She nodded, but didn't look happy about it. What's wrong? I'm scared. What if we can't get Tobias back? What if Judith won't let him go? Then we make her. How? I don't know yet. But we'll figure it out. Eliza looked at Grace sleeping in her arms. I can't lose him, Cormac. I can't lose both my children. You won't. I promise. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You can't promise that. Watch me. That night we sat by the fire together. Eliza was getting stronger every day. The color had returned to her cheeks. She could walk without help now, could care for Grace without assistance. She was healing, and so, I realized, was I. Cormac, she said suddenly, can I ask you something? Sure, why haven't you gone back? To town, I mean. To people. It's been 6 years. I didn't have a reason to. And now? Now I do. She didn't ask what the reason was. Maybe she already knew. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Eliza said, when we get Tobias back, what will you do? What do you mean? Will you go back to your mountain, back to being alone? I thought about it. A week ago, the answer would have been yes, absolutely, without question. But now, sitting here with Eliza and Grace, with Flint at my feet and the cabin warm around us, the mountain felt empty. The solitude felt like a cage. I don't know, I said honestly. I haven't thought that far ahead. Well, you should. Because once this is over, you'll have to decide. Stay dead or start living again. And what would you have me do? Live. Choose life. Choose connection. Choose something other than guilt. That's easier said than done, I know, but you're already doing it. You just don't see it yet. On the 5th day, I went outside for the first time since the storm began. The snow was chest-deep in places. Drifts had piled against the cabin walls, nearly covering the windows. The sky was clear now, brilliant blue, and the sun reflecting off all that white was blinding. I dug out the door, cleared a path to the woodpile, checked the chimney to make sure it wasn't blocked. The cold was sharp and clean, biting at my exposed skin, but the air felt good, fresh, alive. When I came back inside, Eliza had moved to the chair by the fire. Grace was nursing, and Eliza looked stronger than I'd seen her yet. How is it out there? She asked. Deep, but passable. Another day or two and we can make the journey down. To Thornhill? To Thornhill. We'll need supplies anyway. And we'll need to figure out our approach with Judith. Eliza nodded. I've been thinking about that. And we can't just show up and demand Tobias. She'll have the law on her side. Papers. Documents. Claims that I'm unfit. Then we need to be smarter than her. How? By not playing her game. By changing the rules. Eliza frowned. What does that mean? It means we don't go through the sheriff. We go around him. We find people who Judith has wronged, who have reason to testify against her. We build a case. That could take weeks, months. Then we take weeks, months, however long it needs. But Tobias will be safe. You said it yourself. Judith wants an heir. She won't hurt him. She needs him. Eliza looked uncertain but nodded slowly. All right, we do it your way. On the 6th day, Eliza asked me to teach her how to shoot. We stood outside in the snow, the cold biting at our faces. I'd set up empty cans on a fence post about 20 yards away. Eliza held my rifle, heavy and unfamiliar in her hands. It's going to kick, I told her, so brace yourself. Like this? Firmer. Press the stock tight against your shoulder. I moved behind her, adjusted her stance, positioned her hands. She was small and slight, and the rifle looked too big for her. But there was determination in her face, strength I hadn't seen before. Now breathe, let half of it out. And squeeze. Don't pull, squeeze. She fired. The rifle cracked loud in the clear air. The can didn't move. Too high, I said. Try again. She did, and again, and again. On the 5th shot, she hit the can. It flew backward off the post. Eliza lowered the rifle, a smile spreading across her face. I did it. You did. Teach me more. So I did. We spent an hour out there in the cold. I taught her how to reload, how to aim, how to breathe through the fear. By the end, she was hitting the cans more often than not. Why are you teaching me this? She asked as we walked back to the cabin. Because you need to know how to protect yourself and your children. You think it'll come to that? Violence? I hope not, but hope isn't a plan. She nodded slowly. You're right. Thank you. On the 7th night, we sat by the fire and I told her about the war, about things I'd never told anyone, about the battles I'd fought, the men I'd killed, the friends I'd lost. She listened without judgment, without horror, just listened. When I finished, she said, You did what you had to do. Did I? Or did I just tell myself that to sleep at night? Both, probably. War doesn't give us good choices, just terrible ones. You sound like you understand. I understand survival. I understand doing things you never thought you'd do. I understand looking back and wondering who you've become. We were quiet for a moment. Then I said, Who are you, Eliza Brennan? She smiled sadly. I don't know anymore. I used to be someone's daughter, then someone's wife, then someone's mother. But who am I underneath all that? I have no idea. Maybe that's what we figure out after all this. Who we are when we're not running, when we're not surviving, when we can just be. Maybe. On the 8th day, Grace laughed for the first time. A small sound, barely there, but unmistakable. Eliza had been making faces at her, and Grace's whole face lit up with joy. Eliza looked at me with tears in her eyes. Did you hear that? I heard. She laughed. My baby laughed. I felt something crack open in my chest, something I'd kept locked tight for 6 years, a warmth, a lightness, a feeling I'd forgotten existed, joy. On the 9th day, we prepared to leave. I packed supplies, food, blankets, ammunition. Eliza wrapped Grace in layers of warm clothing. Flint sensed the change and paced excitedly by the door. Are you ready for this? I asked Eliza. She looked at me with clear eyes. No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's all we can do. That night, our last night in the cabin, we sat by the fire in silence. There was no need for words. We both knew what tomorrow meant, the journey down the mountain. The confrontation with Judith, the fight for Tobias. Everything was about to change. Eliza broke the silence first. Cormac? Yeah? When we were in labor, when Grace was being born, I asked you to promise something. Do you remember? I remember. You promised to find Tobias if I didn't make it. But I did make it. So that promise is void. Eliza, no, listen. I release you from that promise. You've done more than enough. You saved my life. You saved Grace. You've given us shelter and care and kindness. You don't owe us anything more. I looked at her across the firelight. You're right. I don't owe you anything. I stood up, walked over to her, knelt down so we were eye to eye. But I'm not doing this because I owe you. I'm doing it because I want to. Because for the first time in 6 years, I have something worth fighting for. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. You barely know me. I know enough. What if we fail? What if Judith wins? Then we fail fighting, together. She reached out, put her hand on my cheek. You're a good man, Cormac Thorne. I'm trying to be. No, you are. She leaned forward and kissed me, not on the cheek, on the lips, soft and brief and full of everything we hadn't said. When she pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I'm sorry, she whispered. I shouldn't have. Don't be sorry. I pulled her close, kissed her again, longer this time, deeper. Her hands came up to my face, my hair, my arms wrapped around her, careful of Grace sleeping between us. When we finally broke apart, Eliza was crying, but she was smiling too. I don't know what this is, she said. I don't know what we're doing. Neither do I. But I know it feels right. It does. We sat together, her head on my shoulder, Grace asleep in her arms, Flint curled at our feet. Outside, the mountain was quiet. The storm had passed. Tomorrow we'd leave this place. We'd face whatever came next. But tonight, we were just two people who'd found each other in the darkness. Two people learning to hope again. And that was enough. On the 10th morning, I woke before dawn. The cabin was cold. The fire had burned down to ash. But I felt warm, felt alive. Eliza was already awake, feeding Grace. She looked up when I stirred. Good morning, she said softly. Morning. Are we really doing this? We're really doing this? I'm scared. So am I. But you're still going. I'm still going, she smiled. Then I'm with you. Whatever happens, whatever happens. I built up the fire, made breakfast. We ate in silence, both of us thinking about the day ahead. Then I loaded our supplies onto a sled I'd built years ago. The journey would be easier if I could pull most of the weight. Eliza bundled Grace against the cold. The baby was so small, so fragile. But she was strong. She'd survived being born in a blizzard. She could survive this, too. Flint stood at the door, tail wagging, ready to go. I took one last look at the cabin. My home for 6 years, my refuge, my prison. It looked different now, not empty, not cold, just quiet. Maybe I'd come back here someday, maybe I wouldn't, but either way, I wasn't the same man who'd built these walls. That man had died the night he heard a woman screaming in the storm. This man, whoever he was becoming, was ready to face the world again. Ready? I asked Eliza. She took my hand. Ready. We stepped out into the bright morning. The snow sparkled in the sunlight. The air was crisp and clean. And ahead of us, down the mountain, lay Thornhill. Lay Judith Brennan. Lay Tobias. Lay whatever came next, but we'd face it together, and that made all the difference. The journey down the mountain took 2 full days. I pulled the sled with our supplies while Eliza walked beside me, Grace bundled against her chest. The snow was deep, but the sky stayed clear. Cold bit at our faces, turned our breath to white clouds. But we kept moving. Flint ranged ahead, breaking trail, his black and white coat stark against the snow. Every hour I called him back, made sure he wasn't ranging too far. The dog seemed to understand the seriousness of our journey. He stayed close, alert, protective. We didn't talk much. The effort of walking through chest-deep drifts took all our energy. But that night, when we made camp in a sheltered grove of pines, Eliza sat close to me by the fire. Tell me about Thornhill, I said. What should I expect? It's small, maybe 300 people. One main street. General store, saloon, church, courthouse. The Brennan Ranch supplies most of the town's economy. So most people are either afraid of Judith or dependent on her. What about people who aren't? People she's wronged? Eliza thought for a moment. There's Martha Coyle. She used to be our housekeeper. Judith fired her 2 years ago, said she was too old, too slow. Martha was furious, but there was nothing she could do. Would she testify against Judith? Maybe, if she thought it would matter. Anyone else? Jacob. Who's Jacob? Eliza's voice softened. Marcus's younger brother. He's different from the rest of the family. Kinder. He tried to help me sometimes, small things, making sure I had enough to eat, checking on me when Marcus was away. Where is he now? Still at the ranch, I think. Unless Judith drove him away too. Would he help us? I don't know. He's weak, always has been. Judith terrifies him. We'll see, I said. Fear makes people do terrible things, but it can also make them brave. The second night we camped closer to the valley. I could see lights in the distance. Thornhill. Somewhere down there Tobias was sleeping, or maybe lying awake, wondering where his mother had gone. Tomorrow, I told Eliza. Tomorrow we start making this right. She nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. I'm afraid of seeing him, afraid he'll hate me for leaving. He won't hate you, he's 4 years old, he just wants his mother back. What if Judith has poisoned him against me? What if she's told him I abandoned him? Then we'll show him the truth. Not with words, with actions. Eliza looked at Grace sleeping in her arms. I just want my children safe, both of them. Is that too much to ask? No, it's not too much. And we're going to make it happen. We reached Thornhill by noon the next day. The town was exactly as Eliza had described. Small, quiet. A single main street with buildings on either side. People stopped and stared as we walked down the center of the road. A mountain man they hadn't seen in 6 years. A woman who was supposed to be dead. A baby who shouldn't exist. The whispers started immediately. Is that Cormac Thorne? I thought he was dead. That's Eliza Brennan. But she died in the storm. Where did that baby come from? I ignored them all, kept walking until we reached a small building with a hand-painted sign. Dr. Iris Halsey. I pushed open the door. A woman looked up from a desk. She was maybe 45, with gray-streaked hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She took one look at Eliza and Grace and stood up immediately. My God, Eliza Brennan, we thought— I know what you thought, Eliza said. Can we come in? Of course, of course. Dr. Halsey ushered us into an examination room. She checked Grace first, her movements quick and efficient. The baby's healthy, strong. How old? 10 days. And you delivered her where? In my cabin, I said, during the storm. Halsey looked at me with new respect. You did well, very well. Then she examined Eliza, checked her stitches, her recovery, asked questions about bleeding and pain. When she finished, she sat back. You're healing nicely. You're lucky to be alive. I know, Eliza said. Cormac saved me. Halsey looked between us. There are stories going around town about what happened to you, about Judith Brennan throwing you out during the storm. They're true, Eliza said. Every word. Halsey's face hardened. I've never liked that woman. Too cold, too cruel. But I never thought— She shook her head. What are you going to do? Get my son back. Judith won't give him up easily. I know. That's why we need help. People willing to testify against her. Halsey was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Leave the baby with me, just for now. While you do what you need to do, she'll be safe here. Eliza hesitated. I don't want to let her go, I understand. But if you're going up against Judith Brennan, you need to be able to move quickly. You can't do that with a newborn. Eliza looked at me. I nodded. Okay, Eliza said, but I want to see her every day, of course. After we left the doctor's office, I asked Eliza where Martha Coyle lived. She directed me to a small house on the edge of town. The paint was peeling and the fence needed repair, but smoke rose from the chimney. An old woman answered the door. She was small and bent, with white hair and watery blue eyes. When she saw Eliza, her mouth fell open. Eliza, child, is that really you? Hello, Martha. The old woman pulled Eliza into a fierce hug. We thought you were dead. The whole town thought— She pulled back, looked at me. Who's this? Cormac Thorne. He saved my life. Martha studied me. I've heard of you. The hermit on the mountain. That's me. Come in, both of you. You look half frozen. Inside, Martha made tea and we sat at her small kitchen table. Eliza told her story. Everything. The storm, the birth, the 10 days in the cabin. Martha listened without interrupting, her face growing darker with each detail. That woman is evil, Martha said when Eliza finished. Pure evil. Will you help us? Eliza asked. Will you testify about what you saw at the ranch? Martha was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I'm an old woman. I have nothing left to lose. Judith already took my livelihood, my reputation. She can't hurt me anymore. So you'll do it? I'll do it. And I know others who will too. People she's wronged over the years. People who are tired of being afraid. Can you reach out to them? Ask if they'll stand with us? I can. Give me 2 days. We have 2 days, I said. After we left Martha's house, we went to find Sheriff Whitlock. His office was a small building next to the courthouse. Inside, a man sat behind a desk, his feet propped up, a newspaper in his hands. He was older than I expected, maybe 55. Gray hair, lined face, tired eyes. He looked up when we entered, and his expression shifted from bored to shocked. Eliza Brennan, Sheriff Whitlock. We heard you died in the storm. I nearly did. This man saved me. Whitlock looked at me. Cormac Thorne. Haven't seen you in years. I've been keeping to myself, so I heard. What brings you down from your mountain? I gestured to Eliza. Her. Whitlock set down his newspaper, lowered his feet. This is about the boy, Tobias. It's about my son, Eliza said. My son who was taken from me. Judith Brennan says you abandoned him. Judith Brennan threw me into a blizzard while I was in labor. That's a serious accusation. It's the truth. Whitlock sighed. He looked tired. Not just physically tired, soul tired, like a man who'd compromised too many times and couldn't remember why he started. Eliza, I don't doubt you've had a hard time, but the Brennan family has legal custody of that boy. Papers signed by a judge. What judge? Eliza demanded. Judge Carver, over in Helena. Carver's in Judith's pocket, I said. Whitlock didn't deny it. Maybe so, but he's still a judge, and I'm just a sheriff, so you won't help us. I didn't say that. Whitlock leaned back in his chair. Look, I know Judith Brennan is a hard woman. I know she's done things I've looked the other way on. But she's powerful. She owns half this county, and I've got a family to think about. Everyone has a family, I said. That's not an excuse. Whitlock's face flushed. You don't know what it's like. My wife is sick. Tuberculosis. The medicine costs more than I make in 6 months. Judith helps with that. If I cross her, then your wife dies, I finished. I understand. Do you? I lost my wife and daughters to disease 6 years ago. There was nothing I could do to save them. But you have a choice. You can stand with us or stand with Judith, but don't pretend you're powerless. Whitlock was quiet for a long time. Then he said, if you can build a case, real evidence, witnesses willing to testify, I'll take it to the territorial marshal. That's the best I can offer. It'll have to be enough, Eliza said. We left the sheriff's office and walked back toward the doctor's office. The sun was setting, painting the snow orange and pink. Eliza looked exhausted. Where are we staying tonight, she asked. I don't know. Is there a boarding house? There is. But Judith will hear we're in town if we stay there. Then we need somewhere she won't look. Eliza thought for a moment. The church. Reverend Matthews won't turn us away. The church was a white building at the end of Main Street. Simple, clean. The door was unlocked. Indeed, candles burned on the altar, and an old man knelt in prayer. He looked up when we entered. Can I help you? Reverend Matthews, Eliza said. I need sanctuary. The old man stood slowly. His face registered shock, then joy, then concern in rapid succession. Eliza Brennan. Child, we thought you were gone. I'm here, and I need help. We stayed in the church that night. The Reverend gave us blankets and food, asked no questions, just offered what he had. That night, lying on a pew with my coat as a pillow, I stared at the ceiling and thought about what we'd started. We were going up against the most powerful family in the territory, with nothing but the word of a few wronged people and a sheriff who was too compromised to be reliable. It wasn't much, but it was something. The next morning, Martha Coyle came to the church with news. I found 3 people willing to testify, maybe 4. Who? Sarah Winters. Used to work at the Brennan Ranch. Judith fired her when she got pregnant. Said she wouldn't have unmarried mothers working in her house. Who else? Tom Bradley. Judith foreclosed on his farm 2 years ago. Took it for a fraction of what it was worth. And the third? Martha hesitated. Jacob Brennan. Eliza's eyes widened. Jacob? He agreed to testify? He came to my house last night. Said he couldn't live with what his mother had done anymore. Where is he now? He'll be here this afternoon. Jacob Brennan arrived at the church just after noon. He was younger than Marcus would have been, maybe 32, tall but thin, with the same dark hair and brown eyes as Tobias. But where Tobias was sweet and gentle, Jacob looked haunted. "Eliza," he said when he saw her, "thank God you're alive." Eliza stood but didn't embrace him. "Why did you let her do it, Jacob? You were there. You watched them drag me out." Jacob's face crumpled. I know, and I'm sorry. I tried to stop her. But Mother, she's impossible to stand against. You didn't try hard enough." "No, I didn't." Jacob looked at me. "You're Cormac Thorne, I am. You saved Eliza. I did what needed to be done." Jacob nodded. "I should have done the same. But I was weak. I've always been weak." "Are you still weak?" I asked. "I don't want to be." "Then help us. Tell the truth about what happened." Jacob took a deep breath. "I will. I'll testify against my own mother, if that's what it takes. But you need to know something." "What?" "Mother knows you're in town. She knows you have the baby, and she's not going to let this go." "Let her come," Eliza said. "I'm not running anymore. It's not you I'm worried about. It's Tobias." Jacob's voice dropped. "Mother has moved him. He's not at the ranch anymore." Eliza went pale. "Where is he?" "I don't know. She won't tell me. She said if you tried to take him back, she'd make sure you never found him." Eliza's legs gave out. I caught her before she hit the floor. "She's lying," I said. "She has to be." "She's not," Jacob said quietly. "I've searched the house, the barns, everywhere. He's gone." Eliza was shaking. "My son, my baby boy, where would she take him?" "I don't know, but I'll help you find him. I swear." We spent the rest of that day and the next gathering our witnesses. Sarah Winters came first. A young woman, maybe 20, with a baby on her hip. She told her story simply. How Judith had cast her out for getting pregnant. How she'd had nowhere to go. How she'd nearly starved before finding work at a farm outside town. Tom Bradley came next. A weathered farmer in his 50s, bitter and angry. He showed us the foreclosure papers, showed us how Judith had bought his land for pennies and then sold it for a fortune. By the end of the second day, we had 5 witnesses, 5 people willing to stand against Judith Brennan. It wasn't much, but it was more than we'd had. Martha pulled me aside that evening. "There's one more person you should talk to." "Who?" "Wade Garrett. He used to be Judith's foreman, the one who actually dragged Eliza out into the storm. Where is he?" "Dead. Died 2 weeks ago, but before he died he gave a confession to his brother, said he couldn't go to his grave with that on his conscience." "Do you have the confession?" "His brother does, and he's willing to share it." "Get it. We need every piece of evidence we can find." That night I met Wade Garrett's brother in the church. He was a broken man, eyes red from crying, hands shaking as he handed me a folded piece of paper. "Wade wrote this 3 days before he died," the brother said. "He told me what he'd done, what Mrs. Brennan made him do. He was sick about it, said it haunted his dreams." I read the confession. It was short but damning. Wade had written that Judith ordered him to remove Eliza from the house, that she'd said the woman was in labor, but that didn't matter, that Judith wanted her gone permanently. "Can we use this?" I asked. "It's yours." Wade wanted the truth to come out, even if it was after he was gone. "Thank you." The brother left and I showed the confession to Eliza. She read it with tears streaming down her face. He threw me out, and then he felt guilty about it, but not guilty enough to save me when it mattered. "At least he told the truth in the end," I said. "It doesn't bring back the time I lost with Tobias, doesn't undo what Judith did." "No, but it's proof. Real, documented proof." "Will it be enough?" "It has to be." On the 3rd morning, Jacob came to the church early. He looked like he hadn't slept. "Mother knows what we're planning. She's furious." "Good," I said. "Angry people make mistakes." Jacob shook his head. "You don't understand. She's not just angry. She's dangerous. She sent word to Judge Carver, called in favors. She's trying to get a court order declaring you unfit, Eliza, trying to make the custody permanent. When? The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow. 2 o'clock. At the courthouse. Tomorrow? Eliza's voice rose. That's not enough time. It's all the time we have, I said. We take what we've gathered and we fight. What if we lose? Then we keep fighting, but we don't lose. That afternoon we met with all our witnesses at the church. I looked at the faces gathered there. Martha Coyle, Sarah Winters, Tom Bradley, Jacob Brennan, Wade Garrett's brother. 5 people. 5 ordinary people who'd been wronged by one powerful woman. Tomorrow we go to court, I said. Tomorrow we tell the truth, and we trust that the truth is enough. What if the judge doesn't listen? Sarah asked. Then we make sure everyone else hears. The whole town, the whole territory. We don't let Judith bury this. Martha spoke up. I've lived in this town 50 years. I've watched Judith Brennan hurt people and get away with it because everyone was too afraid to speak up. I'm not afraid anymore. Neither am I, Sarah said. Nor I, Tom added. Jacob was last. I'm testifying against my own mother, against my family. But it's the right thing to do, the only thing. I looked at Eliza. She was pale but determined. Tomorrow we get your son back. She nodded. Tomorrow. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in the pew staring at the ceiling, thinking about what we were about to do. We were going up against a judge who was bought and paid for, against a woman with unlimited resources, against a system designed to protect people like her. But we had something she didn't. We had the truth, and we had people willing to tell it. I thought about Tobias, a 4-year-old boy who'd been taken from his mother, who'd probably been told she'd abandoned him, who was out there somewhere, scared and alone. We'd find him, no matter what it took, no matter how long. I'd made a promise, and I kept my promises. Eliza came and sat beside me in the darkness. Can't sleep either? No. Are you scared? Terrified. Me too. We sat in silence for a while, then Eliza said, Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know something. What? You gave me hope. When I had none. You gave me a reason to fight, to live. I'll never forget that. I took her hand. You gave me something too. What? A reason to come down from that mountain. A reason to be part of the world again. We sat there together in the quiet church, holding hands, gathering strength for what was coming. Outside the town slept. But tomorrow we'd wake it up. We'd force it to see what Judith Brennan really was, and we'd fight for a little boy who deserved better. The hearing was set for 2 o'clock, but we arrived at the courthouse at noon. News had spread through town. A crowd had gathered. People stood on the steps, lined the street, pressed against the windows. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when Eliza Brennan came back from the dead. Sheriff Whitlock met us at the door. Judge is already inside. So is Judith and her lawyer. Who's the lawyer? Raymond Cross. Best money can buy. Of course he is. We entered the courtroom. It was packed. Every seat filled. People standing along the walls. I saw Judith Brennan sitting at the front table, dressed in black, her face carved from ice. Beside her sat a man in an expensive suit. Raymond Cross, I assumed. Judge Carver sat at the bench. He was older, maybe 60, with white hair and a face that suggested he'd never been contradicted in his life. Eliza and I sat at the other table. Our witnesses filed in behind us. The room went silent. Judge Carver banged his gavel. This hearing is called to order. We're here to determine the custody of the minor child Tobias Brennan. He looked at Eliza. Mrs. Brennan, you were declared dead 2 weeks ago. Yet here you are. I'm very much alive, Your Honor. So, I see. Mr. Cross, you may present your case. Raymond Cross stood, smooth, polished, confident. Your Honor, this is a simple matter. Mrs. Eliza Brennan abandoned her son during a blizzard. She left him in the care of his grandmother and disappeared into the storm. We believed her dead because that was the logical conclusion. Now she's returned, claiming she was thrown out. But she has no proof, no evidence, just her word against that of a respected family. He gestured to Judith. Mrs. Judith Brennan has provided a safe, stable home for young Tobias. She has the means to care for him, the resources to educate him, the standing in the community to ensure his future. Mrs. Eliza Brennan, on the other hand, is destitute, has no home, no means of support, and has demonstrated extremely poor judgment by involving herself with a mountain hermit of questionable character. He looked at me when he said that last part. For the sake of the child, Your Honor, we ask that you grant permanent custody to Mrs. Judith Brennan. Cross sat down. The judge looked at me. Mr. Thorne, I understand you're representing Mrs. Eliza Brennan? I am. You're not a lawyer. No, Your Honor. I'm just a man who knows the truth when he sees it. A murmur went through the courtroom. The judge frowned, but gestured for me to continue. I stood. Your Honor, I'd like to call my first witness, Dr. Iris Halsey. Dr. Halsey took the stand. I asked her to describe Eliza's condition when we brought her in. She was recovering from childbirth. She showed signs of severe exposure, frostbite on her extremities, evidence of malnutrition, and bruising consistent with being forcibly handled. In your professional opinion, could she have walked into that storm voluntarily? Absolutely not. She was 9 months pregnant and in active labor. No woman in that condition would choose to go out into a blizzard. Thank you, doctor. Next, I called Martha Coyle. She testified about the way Judith had treated Eliza at the ranch. Like a servant, like property. How she'd heard Judith say more than once that Eliza wasn't good enough for the Brennan name. Then Sarah Winters, then Tom Bradley. Each one telling their story of how Judith had wronged them, how she'd used her power to crush anyone who stood against her. Cross objected repeatedly. Your Honor, this is character assassination. None of this is relevant to the custody issue. It's all relevant, I said. It establishes a pattern of behavior. It shows what kind of woman Mrs. Judith Brennan really is. The judge allowed it. Barely. Finally, I called Jacob Brennan. The courtroom went silent. Jacob walked to the stand, his face pale but determined. When he sat down, Judith leaned forward, her eyes blazing. State your name for the record, Jacob Brennan, and your relationship to the plaintiff. She's my mother. Another murmur through the courtroom. Mr. Brennan, were you present on the night Eliza was removed from the Brennan ranch? I was. Tell us what you saw. Jacob took a deep breath. I saw my mother order Wade Garrett to take Eliza outside. I heard Eliza screaming that she was in labor. I saw her try to hold onto the doorframe, and I watched Wade drag her out into the storm and lock the door behind her. The courtroom erupted. Judge Carver banged his gavel. Order! Order! When the noise died down, I continued. What did your mother say when this was happening? She said it was necessary, that Eliza was a problem that needed to be dealt with, that with Eliza gone, Tobias would be theirs completely. And what about Tobias? Where was he? He was screaming, crying for his mother, trying to run after her. But Mother held him back. Jacob's voice broke. I'll never forget the look on his face, the terror, the confusion. He thought his mother was leaving him. He didn't understand that she was being taken. Thank you, Jacob, that's all. Cross jumped up for cross-examination. Mr. Brennan, isn't it true that you stand to inherit nothing if you testify against your mother? Jacob looked at him calmly. I stand to inherit my self-respect. That's worth more than money. Cross had no response to that. Finally, I presented Wade Garrett's written confession. The judge read it, his face growing darker with each line. Your Honor, I said, the evidence is clear. Judith Brennan attempted to murder Eliza Brennan by throwing her into a blizzard during active labor. She did this to gain permanent custody of Tobias. She's a danger to that child and to anyone who stands in her way. Cross stood. Your Honor, this is hearsay and speculation. We have no proof that... We have a signed confession from the man who carried out the act, I interrupted. We have eyewitness testimony from her own son. We have medical evidence. We have a pattern of behavior spanning years. How much more proof do you need? Judge Carver was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I'll take a short recess to consider the evidence. He left the courtroom. The wait was agonizing. 20 minutes, 30, 45. Eliza gripped my hand so tight I lost feeling in my fingers. Finally, the judge returned. The courtroom fell silent. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, and I've come to a decision. He looked at Judith. Mrs. Judith Brennan, the evidence against you is overwhelming and disturbing. You have abused your power, endangered a life, and shown a callous disregard for human decency. He turned to Eliza. Mrs. Eliza Brennan, I am granting you full custody of your son Tobias. Furthermore, I am ordering Mrs. Judith Brennan to reveal his current location immediately. The courtroom exploded with noise. Eliza collapsed against me, sobbing. I held her tight, but Judith didn't move. She sat frozen, her face a mask of fury. Mrs. Brennan, the judge said, "Where is the boy?" Judith stood slowly. She looked at Eliza with pure hatred. You think you've won, but you've won nothing. Where is Tobias? The judge demanded. Judith smiled, a cold, terrible smile. Somewhere you'll never find him. Judge Carver's face went red. Mrs. Brennan, I'm holding you in contempt. Sheriff, take her into custody. Whitlock moved forward, but Judith held up a hand. You can arrest me. You can take everything I own. But that boy is gone, and he's never coming back to her. She pointed at Eliza. You don't deserve him. You never did. He's better off without you. Eliza stood, shaking with rage. Where is my son? Where is Tobias? Judith just smiled and said nothing as Whitlock led her away. The courtroom erupted into chaos, people shouting, some cheering, some angry. But all I could see was Eliza's face, the devastation there, the fear. We'd won the legal battle, but we'd lost the boy. The courthouse steps were chaos, people pressing in from all sides, shouting questions, reaching for Eliza. I put my arm around her, pushed through the crowd. She was shaking so hard, I thought she might collapse. Where is he? She kept saying. Where's my son? We'll find him, I said, I promise. But even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. Judith had hidden him somewhere she thought we'd never look. And now she was in custody, locked up, refusing to talk. Sheriff Whitlock caught up to us at the edge of the crowd. I've got men searching the ranch, every building, every room. We'll find him. What if he's not there? Eliza's voice was rising, panic setting in. What if she sent him away, to another state, another territory? We don't know that. We don't know anything. I pulled her close, let her cry into my chest. The crowd was still watching, still whispering. I didn't care. Let them watch. Jacob appeared beside us. His face was grim. I searched the ranch before I came to town. He's not there. I think Mother moved him weeks ago. When she first heard you might have survived. Eliza pulled away from me, grabbed Jacob's shirt. Where would she take him? Think. You know her. Where? Jacob shook his head. I don't know. She has friends, business associates, people who owe her favors all over the territory. We'll check everyone, Whitlock said. I'll wire the territorial marshal, get help from Helena. That could take weeks, Eliza said. Months. My son could be anywhere by then. I looked at Whitlock. Can we question Judith again? I can try, but she's lawyered up now. Cross won't let her say a word. Then we find another way. We were halfway to the sheriff's office when the gunshot cracked through the air. I shoved Eliza to the ground, covered her body with mine. Another shot, then another. People screaming, running, diving for cover. Flint was already moving. The dog bolted toward the sound, barking furiously. I looked up, saw 3 men on horseback at the end of the street. They wore bandanas over their faces, but I recognized the build of the one in front, Wade Garrett's brother, the one who'd given us the confession. No, not Wade's brother. These were Judith's men, the ones she'd sent to make sure we never made it to court. They'd been waiting. I pulled my rifle from where I'd strapped it across my back, took aim, fired. The lead rider jerked backward, clutched his shoulder, but didn't fall. Get Eliza inside, I yelled to Whitlock. Now! The sheriff grabbed Eliza, dragged her toward the nearest building. I fired again. Missed. The riders were charging now, coming straight down Main Street. Flint reached them first. The dog launched himself at the nearest horse, teeth snapping at the animal's legs. The horse reared, threw its rider. The man hit the ground hard. I ran toward them, using buildings for cover. Fired twice more. One bullet caught a rider in the leg. He screamed, pulled his horse around, tried to retreat. But the third rider kept coming. He raised his pistol, aimed at me. Then Jacob was there. He tackled the man off his horse, both of them crashing to the ground. They struggled, rolled in the dirt. The gun went off, the bullet going wild. I reached them, kicked the gun away. Jacob had the man pinned now, breathing hard. "Who sent you?" Jacob demanded. The man just glared. I knelt down, put my face close to his. "Your boss is in jail. She can't protect you anymore. Tell us where the boy is, and maybe the judge goes easy on you." The man spat at me. "Wrong answer." I stood, looked at Whitlock, who'd come running with his deputy. "Lock him up with Judith. Let them explain to the judge why they tried to kill witnesses." The other two riders were gone, disappeared into the hills. But we had one. That was something. Then I heard it, a sound that stopped my heart. Flint, yelping in pain. I spun around. The dog was on the ground, red spreading across his white fur. He'd been shot. In the chaos, one of the riders had shot him. No. I ran to him, dropped to my knees. Flint was panting, his eyes wide with pain and confusion. The bullet had caught him in the shoulder. Blood soaked his fur, pooled on the dirt beneath him. "Hold on, boy, just hold on." I scooped him up as gently as I could. He whined, tried to lick my hand. I ran toward Dr. Halsey's office, my boots pounding the dirt, Flint's blood soaking into my shirt. Eliza met me at the door. Oh God, Cormac, where's the doctor? Inside, with Grace. I burst through the door. Dr. Halsey looked up from where she was changing Grace's diaper. Her eyes went wide. "Put him on the table, now." I laid Flint down. He was shaking, his breathing shallow. Halsey's hands moved quickly, examining the wound. "The bullet's still in there. I need to get it out." "Can you save him?" She looked at me. Her face was grave. "I don't know. He's lost a lot of blood. But I'll try hard. I know you love this dog, Mr. Thorne. I'll do everything I can." She went to work. I stood back, watched her hands move. Steady, sure. She'd been a doctor for 20 years. If anyone could save him, she could. Eliza came to stand beside me, took my hand. "He's going to be all right." "You don't know that. I have to believe it. And so do you." The surgery took an hour, the longest hour of my life. Halsey worked in silence, her face a mask of concentration. Finally, she stepped back, wiped her hands on a towel. "I got the bullet out, cleaned the wound, stitched him up. Now we wait." "Will he make it?" "The next 24 hours are critical. If he makes it through tonight, he's got a chance." I pulled a chair close to the table, sat down. "I'm staying with him. Cormac, you need rest." "I'm staying." Eliza sat beside me. "Then we're both staying." Dr. Halsey brought blankets, brought water, brought food we didn't eat. And we sat there watching Flint breathe, watching his chest rise and fall, waiting. Night came. The doctor went to check on her other patients, but kept coming back, checking on Flint. Each time she shook her head. No change. Eliza dozed against my shoulder. Grace slept in a basket nearby. But I couldn't sleep, just watched Flint. Remembered the day I'd found him, a half-starved puppy, abandoned on the mountain. I'd taken him in, raised him. He'd been with me through everything, through the lonely years, through the grief. He couldn't die, not now, not like this. "You have to live," I whispered to him. "You hear me? You have to live." Around midnight, Flint's eyes opened, just a crack. He looked at me. His tail thumped once against the table, weak. But there. "That's it, boy, that's it. Stay with me." By dawn, his breathing had steadied. The shaking had stopped. When Dr. Halsey came to check on him, she smiled for the first time. "He's going to make it. He's strong. Stronger than I thought." I put my head down on the table next to Flint, felt relief wash over me like a wave. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank him. He's a fighter." The next day passed in a blur. I stayed with Flint while Eliza went to feed Grace, while Whitlock came with updates on the search for Tobias, while the town buzzed with news of the shootout and Judith's arrest. But still no sign of the boy. Eliza was falling apart. I could see it, the hope draining from her eyes, the fear taking over. She'd won in court, she'd gotten custody. But without Tobias, it meant nothing. On the second day after the shooting, I was sitting with Flint when I heard voices outside. Raised. Urgent. Then the door burst open. A woman stood there. Young, maybe 25. I recognized her from the trial, Sarah Winters, the housekeeper Judith had fired. But she wasn't alone. She held the hand of a small boy, dark hair, brown eyes, thin and pale, but alive. Tobias. Eliza was across the room in an instant. She dropped to her knees, pulled the boy into her arms. Tobias. Oh my God, Tobias. The boy stiffened at first, confused. Then recognition flooded his face. Mama? His voice was small, uncertain. Mama, is that really you? Yes, baby. Yes, it's me. I'm here. I'm here. Tobias burst into tears, wrapped his arms around Eliza's neck, and sobbed like his heart was breaking. Eliza held him, rocking back and forth, crying just as hard. I thought you were dead, Tobias said between sobs. Grandma said you went to heaven. She said you didn't want me anymore. No, baby. I wanted you. I always wanted you. I tried to come back. I tried so hard. Where were you? Eliza pulled back, looked at him. I was hurt. And a good man saved me, and I had a baby, your sister. Tobias's eyes went wide. I have a sister? You do. Her name is Grace. Do you want to meet her? Tobias nodded, wiping his eyes. Eliza stood, still holding him, and walked to where Grace lay sleeping. The boy looked down at the baby with wonder. She's so small. She is. But she's strong, just like you. Tobias reached out, touched Grace's tiny hand with one finger. The baby's fingers curled around his, and Tobias smiled. The first real smile I'd seen on his face. I turned to Sarah. Where was he? Sarah looked exhausted, frightened, but determined. Mrs. Brennan had me take him to her sister's house in Virginia City, 3 days' ride from here. She paid me to keep him there, to tell anyone who asked that he was my nephew. Why did you bring him back? Sarah looked at Tobias. Because I heard what she did. Heard she threw his mother into a blizzard. Heard she tried to have you killed. And I couldn't. I couldn't be part of that anymore. She wiped her eyes. That little boy cried for his mother every night. Every single night. And I kept lying to him, kept telling him she wasn't coming back. But she did come back. And he deserves to be with her. Thank you, Eliza said, her voice breaking. Thank you. Sarah nodded and slipped out the door, probably heading somewhere far from here, somewhere Judith's influence couldn't reach. Tobias had turned his attention to me now. He studied my face with those serious brown eyes. Are you the man who saved my mama? I am. My name's Cormac. Mama said you're a good man. I try to be. Tobias looked at Flint lying on the table with bandages around his shoulder. Is that your dog? He is. His name's Flint. Is he hurt? He got shot, protecting us. But he's going to be okay. Tobias walked over to the table, reached up to pet Flint's head gently. I'm glad he's okay. He seems like a good dog. He's the best. Tobias looked back at me. Are you going to stay with us? With Mama and Grace and me? I looked at Eliza. She was watching me, Grace in her arms, hope and fear mixed on her face. Would you like me to? I asked Tobias. The boy nodded. I would. I think Mama would too. Then yes, I'm staying. Tobias smiled. Good. We can be a family. We can. The trial took another week to fully conclude. Judith Brennan was charged with attempted murder, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 20 years in the territorial prison. Her ranch was seized, her assets frozen. Jacob took over what was left of the Brennan holdings. He promised to run things differently, to treat workers fairly, to make amends for what his family had done. Sheriff Whitlock kept his job, but everyone knew he was on thin ice. He'd have to prove himself all over again. And us? We stayed in Thornhill for 2 more weeks while Eliza recovered fully, while Tobias got used to having a mother again, while Grace grew stronger every day. Flint healed faster than anyone expected. Within a week, he was walking. Within 2, he was running. The dog was tougher than he looked. On a Sunday morning in early spring, we gathered in the small church. Reverend Matthews stood at the altar. The pews were full. Martha Coyle in the front row, crying happy tears. Dr. Halsey holding Grace. Jacob sitting quietly in the back, making peace with his past. And Tobias stood beside me, holding the rings. Eliza wore a simple dress that Martha had sewn, white with blue flowers at the hem. Her hair was loose around her shoulders. She was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Matthews began, "we are gathered here today to witness the joining of Cormac Thorne and Eliza Brennan in holy matrimony." I barely heard the words, just looked at Eliza, at the woman who'd come into my life in a blizzard, who'd changed everything. "Do you, Cormac Thorne, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Eliza Brennan, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Eliza's eyes were bright with tears. "I do." "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." I kissed her, soft and sweet, and the church erupted in applause. Tobias tugged on my sleeve. "Does this mean you're my papa now?" I knelt down to his level. "If you want me to be, I do." "Can I call you papa?" "I'd like that very much." Tobias threw his arms around my neck. "I love you, papa." Something broke open in my chest, something that had been frozen for 6 long years. "I love you too, son." We walked out of that church into bright sunshine. The whole town had gathered on the steps, cheering, throwing rice, celebrating. Flint was there, tail wagging, a ribbon tied around his collar. Tobias immediately ran to the dog, hugging him. Grace slept peacefully in Dr. Halsey's arms, and Eliza stood beside me, my wife now, my family. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we go home. The cabin? For a while. Until we build something bigger, something for all of us." She smiled. "I'd like that." 6 months later, I stood on the porch of our new house. Not the cabin anymore. We'd built an addition. 2 bedrooms, a real kitchen, space for a family to grow. Tobias was in the yard, throwing a stick for Flint. The dog, fully healed now, raced after it with the energy of a puppy. Grace sat on a blanket watching everything with those serious eyes. She was 6 months old now, starting to sit up on her own, starting to laugh. Eliza came out, wrapped her arms around my waist from behind. "Happy?" I turned, kissed her forehead. "More than I ever thought possible." "No regrets? About leaving your mountain?" "None. This is my mountain now, this family, this life." Tobias ran up the porch steps. "Papa, can we go fishing tomorrow, if the weather holds? And can Flint come?" "Of course Flint can come." Tobias grinned and ran back to his game. Eliza rested her head against my chest. "Thank you." "For what?" "For hearing me scream, for coming after me, for giving us this life." I held her close. "You gave me something too." "What?" "A reason to live again." We stood there as the sun set over the mountains, our children playing, our dog running, our home warm behind us. 6 years I'd been dead. 6 years I'd lived in darkness. 6 years I'd believed I was beyond saving. But I'd been wrong. Because on a winter night, when the blizzard screamed and a woman cried out in the darkness, I'd made a choice. I'd gone toward the sound instead of away from it, and that choice had saved us both. Eliza was right. I hadn't saved her that night. We'd saved each other. And now, standing here with my family, I finally understood what Ruth had meant that last morning. "Don't let them be alone," she'd whispered. I wouldn't. Not ever again. This was my family now, Eliza and Tobias and Grace, Flint, and this land and this life we were building together. And I'd protect it, cherish it, fight for it, for as long as I had breath. The mountain had called me back to the world, and I'd answered, and I was finally, truly home. The end.